Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305.
Weekly Benefits Workgroup will now come to order. Thank you all for joining us. Our agenda should be in front of the members and available online as well. I know that we may have a few other folks joining us online as well, but we'll go ahead and begin with introductions of folks here in the room. I am Elizabeth Bennett Parker. I had the honor of being appointed chair of this workgroup by the Uber chair of the larger commission, Senator Eben. I serve as delegate for the 5th District, which is based in Alexandria, and actually the larger commission is the first General Assembly body that I was appointed to, so I've been serving on the larger body for, I guess, 4 years now. We'll start, I guess, at that end of the dais, name, affiliation, and so forth. Thank you. Joanna.
Good morning. My name is Joanna Darkus. I'm an economic justice attorney at the Virginia Poverty Law Center. Happy to be here.
Good morning. I'm Flannery O'Rourke. I'm the Unemployment Insurance Program Director at National Employment Law Project and a Virginia attorney.
Delegate Marty Martinez, District 29, Central Loudoun, and I'm glad to be on this commission. Thank you. Or board.
And moving online, Senator New Craig. We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Senator Christy Craig, District 19, representing parts of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach. Thank you.
And it looks like Julia Hammond, have you joined us as well?
I have. Julia Hammond. I'm here on behalf of the National Federation of Independent Business, Virginia Small Business Trade Association.
Important work group. I also want to recognize other guests in the room, including our VEC Commissioner Mellis. Thank you for joining us. And we'll also hear from Ashley Irvin from VEC in just a moment, but next I'll turn it over to our counsel, Marvi Ali, who will read the enactment clause that created this work group and lays out our responsibilities.
Thank you, Delegate, Madam Chair. The legislative authority for this work group stems from HB 1766 and its Senate cognate SB 1056, HB 1766. Which were passed this past session, 2025. Those bills provide that for unemployment compensation claims effective on or after January 1, 2026, an eligible individual's weekly benefit amount shall be $52 higher than the current weekly benefit amount as it was. And the enactment clause at the end of that bill states that no later than October 1, 2025, the Commission on Unemployment Compensation, in consultation with the Virginia Employment Commission, shall convene a work group to meet at least once each quarter to study making annual adjustments to individual weekly benefit amounts for unemployment compensation as represented in Code Section 60.2-602. And such annual adjustments to weekly benefit amounts shall be based on the average weekly wage as determined by the Virginia Employment Commission. The amount of each annual adjustment shall not be less than zero. The work group shall include employee stakeholder representatives and employer stakeholder representatives. The work group shall complete its meetings by July 1, 2026, and shall submit to the Governor and General Assembly an executive summary and report of its findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvi. Next, we'll turn it over to VEC. Ms. Irvin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the work group. My name is Ashley Irvin. I'm the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the VEC. Thank you for allowing the VEC to be here today. As asked, we've prepared an overview of unemployment insurance, or UI, to share with the group. We have some slides that we were sharing. I'm not sure if they're visible to everyone or.
Thank you. I know we have them on the dais. Senator Craig, do you have the slides, and Julia? Yes. Okay. Great.
Just didn't want to get started.
And Senator Craig, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, those are the wrong slides, yes. There we go.
Okay, first we'll go over some key terms for UI. If we can go to the next slide of it. Okay. Okay. We'll start with the average weekly wage. This data comes from the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages program, which is based on payroll data that employers report for unemployment insurance purposes. The average weekly wage is calculated by taking total wages in a quarter, dividing those by total employment, and then dividing that by the number 13, which is the number of weeks that are in a quarter. This gives a simple measure of the average pay per job per week. It does not take into account the hours worked, so it doesn't translate directly into an annual salary. The next term is the replacement rate or replacement ratio. That is the ratio of the claimant's weekly benefit amount to the claimant's previous average weekly wage, which indicates the percentage of lost earnings that UI benefits replace. So you can take the weekly benefit amount divided by the average weekly wage and get that replacement rate. The recipiency rate is the insured unemployed as a percent of total unemployed, or the share of unemployed workers receiving benefits. It is important to note that this number depends on factors like the eligible number of workers and their decision to apply for benefits. The minimum and maximum weekly benefit amount, these refer to the maximum and minimum dollar amounts an eligible claimant may receive during a benefit year. There is a threshold minimum and a maximum dollar amount of benefits to which a claimant will be entitled, and we will discuss those terms in further detail on another slide. So the question is, how are benefit amounts determined? The amount of wages a claimant earns will determine that claimant's weekly benefit amount and the maximum number of weeks to which the claimant will be entitled. This is known as the base period wages. The regular base period is going to be the first 4 of the last 5 completed calendar quarters prior to the claimant filing a claim for benefits, and that's shown on that chart up there. If a claimant does not qualify in the regular base period, they may qualify using the alternate base period. And the alternate base period includes the 4 most recently completed calendar quarters, including the lag quarter that is up there on the chart, and that is the most recently completed quarter preceding a new claim's effective date. And to explain this and notify claimants are issued a notice of potential benefit entitlement that contains their base period wage information, which will inform them of their monetary eligibility. And circling back to those minimum and maximum weekly benefit amounts, the maximum is going to be the maximum dollar amount an eligible claimant can receive per week during a benefit year. Currently, the maximum weekly benefit amount is $378. A claimant's combined earnings from 2 quarters in that base period must total at least $18,900.01 to qualify for the maximum weekly benefit amount. And the benefit duration varies from 12 to 26 weeks, which also depends on the wages earned in the base period. The minimum weekly benefit amount is the minimum dollar amount an eligible claimant can receive per week. A claimant's combined earnings from the 2 highest quarters in the base period must total at least $3,000 in order to be monetarily eligible for benefits. It is important to note that starting with new initial claims filed effective January 1, 2026, and later, unemployment benefits will increase by $52 per week for eligible individuals, for a total maximum weekly benefit amount of $430 and that minimum of $112. All right, and how are benefits funded? UI benefits are funded by a payroll tax and or a reimbursable contribution paid by employers, which is based on a taxable wage base, and the specific tax rate is determined by the employer's individual experience rating. Taxable employers are liable for unemployment tax in Virginia if they're currently liable for federal unemployment tax. Generally, employers are liable if they have had a quarterly payroll of $1,500 or more, or if they've had an employee for 20 weeks, about 4.5 months or more during a calendar year. Taxes are going to be paid on the first $8,000 of each employee's annual wages. And for those reimbursable employers, those are ones that directly reimburse the state for the actual cost of benefits paid to their former employees, rather than paying a quarterly unemployment tax into the state's unemployment trust fund. And these reimbursable employers are largely made up of nonprofit organizations and governmental entities. So now moving on to some key terms related to the tax side of UI. First, we have the experience rating. That's going to be an employer's tax rate that is influenced by their history with unemployment claims. Companies with more claims generally have higher tax rates. Experience rates are calculated by dividing the benefits charged against the account by the taxable wage amount for the period ending June 30th of the prior year up to 4 fiscal years back. This ratio is then applied to the trust fund factors to create a base tax. Existing employers can receive a base tax rate calculated on their particular account history if they have wages for a minimum of 12 months for the period ending June 30th of the prior year. In other words, if they have completed one full fiscal year, so July 1 through June 30, and they have established an account prior to the rate calculation period. Next, we have pool charges. These are going to be charges that are applied to all employers to cover benefit costs that cannot be recovered from an individual employer, such as a non-chargeable employer, an employer who has closed, or an employer for which the calculated base tax rate is above the maximum. We also have the fund builder tax, which is a charge of 0.2% that is applied to all employers when the trust fund balance is at 50% or less. And as the trust fund is currently above 50% solvency, the fund builder is not currently in effect. What is trust fund solvency and why does it matter? Solvency is the financial ability of a UI trust fund to pay out expected UI benefits and repay debts to the federal government. If a state's unemployment trust fund is insolvent, it may have to borrow or receive assistance from the federal government, and that state may become a credit reduction state. It has taken loans from the federal government to meet its state's unemployment benefits liabilities and has not repaid the loans within the allowable time frame. And this can lead to a reduction in the usual credit against the FUTA tax rate, which means that employers paying wages subject to unemployment insurance tax in those states will owe a greater amount of tax. And finally, how do Virginia's state tax UI costs compare to other states? Virginia state unemployment insurance tax costs are among the lowest in the nation. That's due to a combination of a low tax rate range and a low taxable wage base. Again, that's that Virginia's taxable wage base is $8,000, which is lower than many states, as you can see in the chart on the screen here. They have higher tax. Other states have higher taxable wage bases on which UI tax is applied. And that,
Delegate Martinez.
For those of us with eyesight issues, this table in the chart is barely readable, and the one on the screen is not readable. Is there a way we could expand that so it can be read?
Thank you, Delegate Martinez, Madam Chair. We'll see if they can expand it for us. I apologize about that.
It's okay.
There we go. So that's the comparison of all other states and their base wage rate.
Perhaps, would you mind emailing? Could we?
Yeah, of course, we can email it to everyone.
Yeah,
And
that would be great.
It's pretty big on the individual slide, so.
I'm conscious we've taken you away from your slides now.
Sure, yes. Well, that is our last slide and all the information we had prepared, so I'm happy to take any questions or.
Thank you so much. I also see shortly after you started your presentation, we were joined by another member, David Balducci. Thank you so much for joining us. I did have 2 questions from your presentation, so thank you so much for going through all of that, and then I'll turn it over to questions from my colleagues. Thank you for the definitions and all of the key terms. What is the current average weekly wage?
The current average weekly wage in Virginia, I don't believe I have that information right now, but I can get it. Mitch, was it on that sheet? I handed Mitch a sheet right before this that I did not grab back from him.
And I guess similarly, the current replacement rate or ratio.
I think right now, as of
Actually-
sorry.
Oh, I think Flannery has it in her presentation.
Yes, I was going to say, I saw that there too. So, but right now it is, as of 2023, it was $1,421.36.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
$1,421.36.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there other questions for Ms. Irvin from the dais or online? Delegate Martinez?
If I might, Chair. In some of the numbers that you have here, you say a claimant combined earnings for the 2 highest quarters in the base period must total at least $18,000 for 2 quarters, which implies that their total annual wage is $36,000.
So that is just to, Delegate Martinez and Madam Chair, that is to qualify for the maximum weekly benefit amount. That's what.
So You know, what is, you said the average weekly income is 1,000?
It's around $1,400.
1,400, so, you know, you take that by 52, 36,000 is pretty low, especially for this area here. So I'm really concerned about that number being what it is. And then, can you explain a little bit more on the $3,000 for 2 quarters for the lowest amount? So that means somebody has to make $12,000 a year to at least?
Delegate Martinez, Madam Chair, that is not how that works. So in order to be monetarily eligible to receive the minimum amount of benefits, they just have to have earned a minimum of $3,000 over 2 quarters. So they could have earned $3,000 for that entire base period, and that's it, and they would be monetarily eligible. They just have to meet that threshold, $3,000.
Okay, and then on the 12 to 26, so on the benefit duration, and a lot of the reason I'm asking these questions is I worked as a government contractor, and there's no way, these benefit amounts could ever compensate for what I lost when I got off a contract, had to be in unemployment until the next contract. So, but the benefit duration is 12 to 26 weeks. Can somebody just apply for 26 weeks right now and get it, or do they have to extend from 13 weeks?
So when you apply, that your wages will determine the amount of weeks you get. You can't just, you don't tell, or when you're applying, you don't request a number of weeks. Again, it depends on your wages when we calculate your.
So the lower the wage, the less benefit period I have.
That is correct.
Okay. I think that's a little backwards, but that's what we're here for, is to work on this. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Delegate Martinez. Does anyone online have any questions for Ms. Irvin? Going once, going twice.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Irvin. Next, we'll turn it over to Flannery, whichever you're more comfortable with.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what other states are doing with respect to automatic adjustment of benefits. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so great minds think alike. We start out with some definitions. As promised, Virginia's average weekly wage in 2023 was $1,421.36. The U.S. average in that same year was a little bit lower. We talked before about the most money that a maximum benefit amount. It's the most money a worker can legally receive each week in UI benefits in a given state. As previously noted, Virginia's current maximum benefit amount is $378. That amount will go up to $430 on January 1st, 2026, thanks to SB 1056, HB 1766, the legislation brought by Senator Eben and Delegate Martinez this year and signed into law by Governor Youngkin. Then the minimum benefit amount is the lowest amount of money a UI-eligible worker can legally collect each week in UI benefits. Virginia's current minimum benefit amount is $60, and that amount will increase to $112 on January 1st, 2026, thanks to the same legislation. Now, I do want to note when we're talking about different state laws and different minimum benefit amounts, we want to be really careful because states have different monetary eligibility criteria. So it could be that a worker may be eligible for no money in one state, but a low amount in another state. So it's the minimum benefit amounts are more difficult to compare than the maximum benefit amounts. And with respect to the maximum benefit amount and minimum benefit amount, it's important to know there are no federal standards here. It's up to the states. Now, the replacement rate, as noted, is the share of the worker's previous wages that are replaced by UI benefit payments. Virginia's 2024 replacement rates by quarter, there's a couple of different ways that the replacement ratio is measured, but it's anywhere from 26% to 36%. For comparison, the US average was anywhere from 36% to 43%. So Virginia's not doing great in comparison with the nationwide average, but I also should note that experts generally agree that benefits should replace at least 50% of wages, so it's not a great story for anyone here. I wanted to walk through how automatic adjustments to benefits work. And so we have state A that has automatic adjustments to benefits, and state B has a flat benefit rate. And so right now, Virginia is a state that has a flat benefit rate. So it will go up to $430 for the maximum benefit and to $112 for the minimum benefit on January 1st, but then it's not going to change unless there's legislation brought to change that amount. The state A is a state that has automatic adjustments to benefits. So let's pretend that their law says the maximum benefit amount is 50% of the average weekly wage. The minimum benefit is 10% of the average weekly wage. So 2023, their average weekly wage is $1,000. That would mean 50% of that. The maximum benefit is $500. Minimum benefit, 10% of that would be $100. 2024, the average weekly wage goes up to $1,050, and you see the maximum benefit goes up to $525. Minimum benefit is $105. 2025, the average weekly wage again goes up, maximum benefit goes up to $550, minimum benefit goes up to $110. And so you see year to year, this is not a massive change. It's incremental, it's not a windfall, but it does help the replacement rate be maintained and a little bit better track with inflation. On the other hand, if we look at state B, which is a state like Virginia, even though the average weekly wage goes up at the same pace as state A, the maximum benefit and minimum benefit stay the same. So this is a map that tells you which states are doing these automatic adjustments. And in total, so with UI, we often talk about not just states, but there's 3 territories, DC, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, so 53 jurisdictions. And across the 53 jurisdictions, there's about 30 that are automatically increasing benefits via their state legislation. And shown here in red are the states that are only automatically increasing the maximum benefit amount by the average weekly wage. In purple are states that are automatically increasing both the maximum and minimum benefit by average weekly wage. And then I did include in gold, just for your information, Michigan recently passed a law where starting in 2027, they will automatically increase their maximum benefit by the change in the consumer price index. Now, this is a good opportunity to tell you that a lot of the comparison of state law information, you can get a 40,000-foot view from this annual USDOL report called Comparison of State Laws. However, to get this kind of granular, up-to-date information, I pulled every state's current law to make sure the information was correct. I do want to note a couple of states that are nearby to us. South Carolina has a unique law where they do not automatically increase the benefit amount, but they automatically increase the amount that the director of the state UI agency can increase the benefit amount. So it isn't automatic in a sense. West Virginia in 2024 stopped automatically increasing their benefit amount, but their benefit amount is currently $662. As noted, ours is $378. We'll go up to $430. So you can see that that state and their workers and businesses are still benefiting from the state's legacy of using the automatic adjustments. So when we talk about automatic increase, what is the percentage that they're trying to reach? And this is the percentages in each state, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the states that have a range of percentages of the average weekly wage on this slide and the next one. What you see here, I said to you before, ideally the replacement rate is about 50%. And what you see here is most states are at or around 50% or more, such as Hawaii is 70%. Only a minority of states have an automatic increase to the minimum benefit. Now, Minnesota's maximum is determined by whether they're using the worker's base period or high quarter wages results in a higher weekly benefit amount. Ohio's maximum is determined by the dependency class of the worker, which is to say workers with more dependents get higher benefit amounts in Ohio. And I guess before I leave this slide, I do want to note, we said before, Virginia's average weekly wage in 2023 in covered employment is $14.21, and we said the benefits going up to $430. And if we do the math on that, right now that would be about 30%. So for the state to get closer to what a majority of states are doing, it would not just mean reaching a percentage of, automatically adjusting benefits based on a percentage of average weekly wage, but also incrementally getting our benefits up to that amount, or in one fell swoop. So then I want to talk a bit about the guardrails on automatic increases. So some states statutorily limit the dollar amount of increase in a given year. A number of states limit the increase per year or the change in percentage of average weekly wage based on trust fund solvency or outstanding loan. And this is similar to what Ms. Irvin was discussing. When the trust funds get below a certain level solvent, taxes go up. Maintaining trust fund solvency is important. And so Kentucky, Montana, New York, Oklahoma, Vermont, they have safeguards within their laws so that you can set it and forget it. If the automatic adjustment, if it's a year when the trust fund is low, then the automatic adjustment is lower. Now, there's currently Connecticut has a 4-year statutory pause in increases. There also is a state that, I think it was Louisiana, put a cap on the maximum weekly benefit amount, effectively stopping the automatic benefit increases at a certain point. And then a couple of states, I mentioned this before, a couple of states in trying to achieve their ideal percentage of the average weekly wage to then have the UI maximum benefit increase each year, they got there incrementally. And so that's a good example of that is Kentucky and New York, where New York wanted to get to 50%. They started out with 1 year at 47% and then going up to 48% of the average weekly wage. But what we see is truly only a minority of the states that do the automatic increases have these guardrails. And then I think this is my final slide, is the question of when is the average weekly wage measured, and states have different approaches to this. I think most of the states are looking at the preceding calendar year. I would say the most unique one of the rest would be Pennsylvania, which has a 36-month look-back period. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. Are there questions for Ms. O'Rourke? Delegate Martinez.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sitting here wrestling with the fact that we have this average weekly wage, which is nowhere near what is considered our average median income, which changes in regional. For example, Northern Virginia, our average median income is 6 figures versus maybe some other parts of the state. Yet the benefit is still the same. Not only that, one of my concerns is employers who have to pay this tax. And so what I'm looking for, and maybe you're not the person to answer this, maybe the state staff does, what is our trust solvency? Where are we at with that? What would, say, an increase of $100 per week, how would that cost per employee to the employer per employee? What would that cost be? And when do we reach a point where we start having to take federal loans for solvency? Because I don't want to get there if we're in the black. I don't want to get to where we're borrowing money to keep our solvency. I want to be able to have that happy balance, but I also don't want to impact the employer, even though my personal feeling is our unemployment insurance is no way helping our employer or our constituents. But not only that, where do the federal employees who are being forcibly laid off and rifted, where do they fall in this? I'm assuming they're not covered, but is there a opportunity to help them?
So I think there were, Madam Chair, Delegate Martinez, I think there were a few questions there, and I'm going to try to answer them, but if I forget any, please let me know. So I think first, federal employees should be covered by the unemployment compensation for federal employees, provided they meet all of the other criteria for eligibility to unemployment. So I think that's sort of the last question. In terms of the differences in benefits based on income, one of the problems with Virginia's maximum benefit being so low is, as you noted, there's a cap that is very quickly reached, and then folks that are making more than that $36,000 are not getting more. And so part of the goal, from my perspective, would be to have a higher maximum benefit amount so that it is a better replacement of wages across the income spectrum. And if we look to our neighboring West Virginia, their maximum benefit amount is $662. Virginia's maximum benefit, the whole concept of this came from a policy option from the JLARC 2021 report on the VEC, which found that Virginia's benefit amounts were not replacing enough to allow workers to afford basic necessities. So I think the sort of idea of attaching it to a percentage of the average weekly wage is in part this idea that it's not replacing enough of the wages of persons across the economic spectrum. Now, to the tax issue, I will say what I presented on here was not to change our tax structure. What Ms. Irving, I think, really competently presented on is that Virginia actually has one of the lowest tax rates and one of the lowest taxable wage bases in the country. And I want to put that in numbers that folks can understand. USDOL issued the 2024 Trust Fund Solvency Report. On average, Virginia employers are paying $51 per employee per year in taxes. US average is $286. Now, to be fully transparent, 2023, Virginia employers were paying $119 per employee per year. U.S. average was also around the $280. But if you look at the past 10 years, Virginia employers have been paying a very low tax amount per employee. And what will automatically happen, thanks to the experience rating and to VEC's adjustment of the pool charges, is that as more benefits are paid out, employers will pay more into the trust fund. So provided that our tax rate and taxable wage base and the entire tax scheme is adequate, it should be that as we take more out to pay higher benefits, that more is paid in and the trust fund is made solvent. But a way that the state could consider, if they had questions about that without sort of getting into the grueling process of rethinking UI finance reform, which might be another committee, I'd be happy to be a part of it, is to have those sort of safeguards that I described in the prior slide, where if the trust fund were to look like it was going to go below the 50% solvent, where the fund builder tax would have to kick in, that there would be safeguards in place to make sure that the benefit levels don't automatically increase to those points. Are there any questions I missed? And do you have anything to add?
Delegate Martinez?
I'm good.
Okay. Are there other questions from the folks online?
No questions for me.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker. I think Delegate Martin, you're welcome to go back here. The next item on the agenda, I believe, is sort of other considerations, and I think the conversation we were just having sort of got into that around trust fund solvency and employer taxes and perspectives are things that we need to keep in mind as we continue this work. Sort of to kickstart our conversation, I was rereading the 2021 JLARC report last night, specifically pages 93 to 98, and then chapter 8, which were sort of a great reminder of some of the information Mr. Work shared and just some of the statistics and other things that help put this in perspective. Jay Lark noted that, as Mr. Work said, experts generally agree that UI benefits should replace roughly 50% of an individual's weekly wages, and our current standard benefit replaces less than half of basic food, housing, and transportation costs for many individuals, particularly those who qualify for lower benefits, live in expensive areas, or have dependents. I thought it was interesting, a 1981 third-party review of Virginia's UI program recommended tying the maximum weekly benefit amount to 55% of the state's average weekly wage and indexing it annually. As was covered, I think, by both speakers, our state law sets our base for UI at $8,000, and that was last increased in 1991. As of 2019, 43 states had a higher taxable wage base, and half of other states automatically adjust those bases through indexing as well, nearly all through defining their base as a percentage of the average annual wage. So I think I will stop there, but I want to open it up to our fellow members as we continue our work. Sort of, are there other perspectives or other things you're thinking about or additional information you would like to see that would help us move forward? We know what the average weekly wage is. We know sort of what some other states are doing. What else would be helpful, or what are your perspectives moving forward?
If I might. What I would like to see coming forward is, what is our trust fund? Well, how much do we have in there? 50% solvency, what does that mean? Also, if, say, for example, we were to say we want to increase the unemployment benefits by another $100, what would that cost per employee for the employers? And is there a structure set up for the taxes that are paid by the employers based on the number of employees they have? So would an employer who has 200 employees, would they pay a lower or higher tax rate than somebody who has a lower number of employees? And I would like to see how today, in comparison to the for example, $378, what was that part of percentage of income, average median income, let's say, or weekly income? What percentage was that versus what percentage it is today of a person's total livable income? So, for example, 50,000 10 years ago, the 378 was a lot bigger percentage than it would be today, because of the cost and inflation and everything else that is coming into play at this time period. So what I'm trying to do is find an equitable way to make sure that if we do any more increases in benefits, that we set it up so that we don't, it's not look like we're penalizing the employers, but we're just trying to help our employees meet, trying to live on $60 a week, or even now $112 a week. I mean, it's impossible. So I'm trying to find a way that, when we have people on unemployment, that they can at least survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Martinez. I think the answer to your last question, I'm not sure if I understood it, but in 2019, the average income replacement ratio was 34%, meaning, and we ranked 33rd among states. It sounds like now our replacement ratio is between 26 to 36%. I don't know what that ranking is amongst other states at this point. I think you raised also sort of getting at the idea of the effect of increasing benefits on employer taxes. And so I think, the purpose of the work group is to look at sort of adjustments to amounts. And I think there might be some follow-up work after this meeting to sort of come up with perhaps a different range of options. We talked about an incremental approach, but sort of what are different, if we were to tie it to the average weekly wage, what are some percentage options there, and what would that then look like on the employer side, and so forth. So I think we can sort of come up with those specific numbers later and work together to get those. But I want to turn it over. Anyone online have other thoughts or questions or perspectives to share?
Julia Hammond on behalf of NFIB. I appreciate Delegate Martinez's comments about not wanting to penalize the employer, especially those employers who contribute to the greater fund who may not be the ones who've had to lay people off, who might not be the reason for a drawdown from the fund. And I think as we move forward and we look at what the next options are, I hate to sound doomsday, but I do think we should try and at least play it out to the point where when would the fund builder tax be hit? How can we ensure, because as you saw during COVID and the fact that we had to take significant money from the federal government, if something hopefully far less major, but as you get closer to that tax, and it can be a lot for businesses who are at that point likely already struggling. So just more that we remain cautious as we make sure we provide for those who unfortunately have been separated from their employment, so that they can provide for their families, but also protect the businesses who are continuing to try and operate, especially the small ones. Those are the ones I'm most concerned for.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Certainly appreciate that. Ms. Darkus?
Madam Chair, I am really excited to be having this conversation, and as we're trying to think about how we can meet our charge to alleviate financial hardship and also balance the concerns around making sure that employers can continue to employ people and pay people high wages while we're cognizant of the cost of this insurance that we need to make sure works. To respond to Delegate Martinez's question, the last time weekly benefit amounts were increased in 2012 to go into effect in 2014, the time that the General Assembly set the weekly benefit amount maximum at $378. That to have the same buying power today in 2025, we would need to have we need to have a maximum weekly benefit amount of $518. So that's part of, it's a difference of $140 essentially. It's wonderful that we're going to have this $52 increase and that we have this that kicks in January of 2026, and that we get to have these conversations about what we can do to sustainably increase benefit levels so that we don't have another 12 or 13-year gap between during which benefit amounts stagnate, and we know we're not doing what we need to do to alleviate financial hardship for folks while they're temporarily unemployed. So looking forward to digging into and doing the math. There's so many variables, and also these other states that are already making adjustments have given us a bunch of different examples and a bunch of different design options. So it really does feel like we have the right people in the room, and I'm excited for the conversation about what we can do in Virginia to do right by all of the different parties who are at play, and so we can make sure that our UI system delivers the benefit and the value that we need from it.
Thank you. Mr. Balducci?
Hi, good morning, Delegate Bennett Parker, and thank you for calling on me. And I apologize for not being there in person. I think I'd like to say that the replacement rate is really a critical and has been a critical metric for unemployment insurance. But I'm also aware of the point that Delegate Martinez made, that we have to deal with the potential for uncontrolled costs in the unemployment insurance program. Over the years, and I've been involved with unemployment insurance for many years, there must be constant discipline exerted and oversight of the UI program. So these types of things you're thinking about are very important. As a board member of Social Action Linking Together, and in my many years with the Department of Labor, I have grown to support indexing of the weekly benefit amount using the average weekly wage. This isn't a new concept. I know that over 30 some states have such an index in different ways, and it tends to keep the program in balance So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Balducci. Okay. I think, unless anyone else has anything to add, going once, going twice. Thank you all for that. I think obviously we have a lot of things to consider and more work to do. With that, we do have public comment on our agenda. Looking in the room, I'm not sure we have anyone here for that, but if you are here for public comment. No, okay. I think we are supposed to meet quarterly, so staff or I will be in touch to gauge availability for our next meeting. In the meantime, we'll work with our friends at VEC and members to sort of come up with what we might want to look at next week. Not next week, sorry, next meeting. It's been a long day. And sort of some of the issues that we've talked about today to continue our conversations and move us forward. So if there are no further comments, I will adjourn us and see you all next time. Thank you so much. I don't know if I actually have to.
This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate